Player says that you don't want your team to draft somebody at your position. So when we talk about guys who might be traded as a result of what their teams did in the draft, my first thought is Vikings tight end Kyle Rudolph. They drafted Irv Smith early in the draft, and Rudolph has a high salary. They would save $7.625 million against the salary cap by trading him. They would eat no dead money. There are other candidates on the Vikings roster for trade, Xavier Rhodes, chief among them, but when you look at the fact that they drafted a tight end high in the draft, it could signal the potential exit for Kyle Rudolph from a team that definitely needs the cap relief.
That's Dan Graziano on ESPN. This is Purple Daily, the only place where you're going to get Vikings and NFL talk 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at noon here on AM 1500, scorenorth.com, and streaming live on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Find this and all our Vikings programming. Just search Score North wherever you download podcasts, or go get that Score North mobile app, and you can subscribe to all your favorite podcasts. Give us that 5-star rating. You can win stuff by doing that, or listen at live.scorenorth.com. And if you have an Amazon Alexa device, just say, Alexa, open Score North. And we've been talking for much of the offseason, Judd, about what Dan Graziano was talking about there, which is that the Vikings simply don't have enough money to sign their draft picks at this point. It's just not there. And so something is going to have to happen. And I don't know about you, but when I saw the selection of Irv Smith in the second round, I thought, well, that's either the end of Kyle Rudolph or a restructured contract for Kyle Rudolph. I was in agreement with what Dan Graziano was thinking.
So I thought the same thing immediately. And I've also been going back and forth because Kyle twice in the last couple months or last month has been adamant that he would be happy to restructure and come back. So I've been saying to myself, okay, the Vikings didn't forget to approach him about this. Like, this makes no sense. But I think I might have it. If the Vikings cut Kyle today, they owe him nothing. It's a great salary cap break. $7 million plus back on your cap for 2019. No strings attached. But they're not doing that. But they're not. It's not like they're not going to approach him. What if they have approached him, but nothing Kyle has said would fly in the face of the Vikings saying, we'd like to restructure you and continue to have no guaranteed cash there? Because that would make him say no.
Right.
Like the one thing where he would say no is, Kyle, we really want to restructure your contract and we'll give you a couple extra years and we're not going to guarantee anything.
Because the enticing thing to guys in a position like Kyle Rudolph is, yeah, I'll give you some cap relief, but the trade-off is you're going to give me some security and some guaranteed money down the line.
Because this thing makes no sense right now.
Yeah, I don't know.
The Vikings aren't. Well, no, but it makes
what's going on.
But Kyle wouldn't necessarily be fibbing about his willingness to restructure. But he's never going to tell you, well, they have approached me, but they're going to give me no guaranteed cash. But that would make him and his representative say absolutely not. But here's my other question, and think about this one. If I'm right, and it appears I might be, about Kubiak's influence right now with that team. All right. Zimmer, who is head coach defense, got his guy back, Barr. Like, Barr came back, and I'm sure there were people in that building saying, Mike, I don't know if we can do this. And Mike said, oh, he's coming back for cheaper. Let's do this. We got to do this. And so somebody said, okay, Rick probably, okay, we'll do it. But if Kubiak's influence is as much as we think, is Gary willingly saying, I got Irv Smith now, cut Kyle? Or is he saying, gentlemen, hold on a second here. You're asking me to make Kirk Cousins as productive as possible. And you saw Kirk Cousins when put in a position where he wasn't as productive as possible. I need both these guys. And so consequently, the only other thing that the Vikings could do is go to guys like Linval Joseph and try and not cut them, restructure them. Because I don't want to paint this as a battle royale in Egan, but I will say that Kubiak being head coach offense creates a very interesting conundrum because he can always come back and say, guys, you're paying me a lot and you hired me to make Kirk Cousins as good as he can be. And so if you're going to take away parts, it's going to cost you. And so that might be also why there's been some hang up there and some deliberation and a dilemma about what to do. Because if you cut Kyle, you are cutting a tight end who could be part of a pretty good tight end set with Irv Smith Jr., who would play more of the role of the Zach Ertz type of guy.
Right.
Because Kyle's good, but he's not that guy. So
Actually, the articles I was reading compared him to Jordan Reed.
Okay, well,
they see a lot of Jordan Reed.
Who was Cousins' guy.
Right.
But that also might be why this thing has been stuck and hung up for so long, is a bit of a power struggle between two guys who are both saying, hold on a second, if you want me to be as successful as possible on defense, I need Barr. And then Kubiak coming back and saying, if you want Cousins to be as successful as possible on offense, he needs both those tight ends.
But something has to give. Something has to give.
But
because they have no money.
But could they be putting
to even sign their draft picks?
But could they be putting it on Brzezinski's plate to say, go back to guys like Linval Joseph and start trying to restructure them?
That is the third option, because we talked a lot about Rudolph and what you can do with his contract, cut him or trade him or restructure him. We've talked about guys like Xavier Rhodes and Trey Waynes on the defensive side of the football who you could cut Trey Waynes and it's a zero cap hit, zero dead money, but you're not going to do that. You'd be talking
Especially
about a
not
trade.
now.
Right. You'd be talking about a trade with one of those two guys, but there are some candidates on the roster, like a Linval Joseph, as Judd talked about, who you could go to 2 or 3 guys and restructure them and free up. I think they need $4 to $5 million to have enough money under the cap to sign their draft picks. You could do it in that way and find a few guys on the roster who you restructure. You give them some guaranteed money if you're not comfortable doing that for Kyle Rudolph down the line because of his age and stage in his career. Whoever you restructure with, though, the trade-off again is usually you give us some cap relief now, we give you some guaranteed money later.
Can they restructure Riley Reef?
I believe it would. They could try. I think it would be a little more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a few guys. I mean, you can go to guys, but they all want something from you.
Yeah.
And that's where Kyle could very well be saying, I'd be happy to do it, but what he's not going to tell us is it's going to cost them.
Mm-hmm.
And if the Vikings are saying, Kyle, at your age, we'd like to restructure you and cut your pay, but we don't want to guarantee cash into the future. And he would say, well, okay, then why? What's the point?
Right.
Release me. Because he's got to know, listen, if you are Kyle, the one thing that's sitting out there is the temptation of the Patriots. And nobody's going to say, and Kyle Rudolph is not going to say what I'll say, which is, if I was him, you'd be thinking to yourself, I'm really not Gronk. I'm not that guy. I know that. They should, but they don't. He's going to say to himself, hell, I'll take that job. Tom Brady, right?
But the position Rudolph is in, where he does have some leverage, not with the Vikings per se, but we've talked about how Kirk Cousins got the contract he did. And we always say, just because he's what, the third highest paid quarterback? Fourth. Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, and
is Matt Ryan ahead of him now?
Somebody else just signed a contract that put him ahead of Kirk Cousins. I can't remember who it was, but just because he's in that echelon of pay, don't assume that you're going to get that echelon of play. You know what I mean? That's not how the market works. Kirk Cousins was the top quarterback on the market in a given offseason, so he got the most money that a quarterback could get. That's just how this thing works. So when you have to look at other positions the same way, and Kyle Rudolph, when he hits the free agent market next year, will be one of the top tight ends on the market for whatever we think of him, for whatever he's done the last couple of years for the Minnesota Vikings, and whatever drop-off there's been there, he'll be valued in the market, and he'll get, I don't want to say top dollar for tight end, but I think he has a pretty nice payday waiting for him if he either lets the Vikings cut him this offseason or he plays hardball with them and forces them to go into the season with the contract currently as it stands and then go into free agency next year. He has something to gain by playing hardball with the Vikings right now, doesn't he?
Absolutely, yeah. And if they're basically saying be a good soldier for us, but you get nothing for it,
I would say no.
He's going to say no, and I don't blame him.
Right.
But there has to be an explanation for what's going on here, and perhaps that's it. The Vikings aren't dumb. They didn't forget to approach him. He continues to say, I'd be happy to restructure my contract. Okay, then why aren't you? Why is that not happening?
Something's holding it up.
Clearly, he's not hearing something he likes. And at first I thought, well, is he just lying? But he doubled down then. So it became odd at that point. But he wouldn't be lying if he's just not telling you the whole story. which often in sports, as we all know, happens, right?
No, come on.
Guys tend to, it's sports lying. It's sports fibs.
Nobody's ever lied to us.
It's sports
Judd.
fibs.
Come on.
They're always truthful, Judd.
I know. I mean, but they're all, yeah, exactly. But anyway, so that's, so you've got to find a way to free up enough cash to sign your picks. But after that, it sure appears that they're going to be up against that thing, against the cap. They're not going to, because teams ordinarily like to go into training camp with some room. So if a guy gets hurt, you can sign a guy, take on a contract, you can trade for somebody. But the way things are shaking out right now, this team is going to go into camp up against that cap. And this all goes back to what we're talking about, which is everything that they are doing is predicated on the belief that 2019, that this is going to be it. Like this is it. This isn't about building for the future. It's not about cap space. It's not even about allowing the leeway for somebody to get hurt. It's this team can make a Super Bowl.
And they have to figure out
which is really interesting.
If it's going to be Kyle Rudolph or if whatever they're going to do, they have to figure it out before June 1st. That's the deadline for when you have to be under the cap and have all. And if you're going to cut Kyle Rudolph and have the 0 cap hit, that has to be done before June 1st too. So they have a couple of months to figure this out.